two greatest thrills I've ever had were our Stanley Schumann winning the 1956 National Amateur Baseball Championship and our 1976 UPS team winning the NCAA Division II basketball title in Evansville. Those are the two greatest thrills I've ever had. As far as accomplishment, let me just say, and you and I have talked about this before, Bob, I did a lot of different things in athletics. I never, ever worked a day in my life. I mean, going to work was that pleasant, was that much fun, was that meaningful to me.
Well, let's talk about some of those things.
When I look at Tacoma and think of Doug, I think of the Tacoma Dome, I think of Cheney Stadium, I think of baseball, I think of TAC, Tacoma Athletic Commission. Doug did it all. He was the president, he was a secretary for many, many years. He was just involved. Baseball was his big thing, but he loved all sports. I got to play with him at UPS. Doug was a third baseman. He was a good one. He had a good glove. He had an accurate throw to first base all the time. He was Hall of Fame for UPS. He was just a great, great guy. I and my wife, Carol, and Doug and Arlene, we loved going to UPS, mainly to see Doug whenever we went there. I'm going to really miss him. And all I can say is, Doug, thanks. Thanks for being a friend. I love you, Doug.
Doug is remembered as Mr. Sports in Pierce County. During his 94 years, he was an outstanding third baseman, a sports marketing genius, a radio announcer, a coach, a mentor, a pioneer of women's softball, a golf enthusiast, and just an all-around master of life sporting ceremonies. Today we celebrate him with stories and messages from just a handful of his many friends and fans. From Spartan beginnings in a logging camp in Deming, Washington, where his father worked, to coming of age at Tacoma's Lincoln High School and College of Puget Sound, the McArthur giant emerged. His first pitch on a national stage happened as a baseball manager. Doug was thrilled to be a part of that Stanley Schumann team that won the state, regional, and national amateur baseball championships at Battle Creek, Michigan in 1956.
The upshoot is that we ended up winning the state championship, going to the regionals in Watertown, South Dakota, winning that unbeaten, and to the nationals in Battle Creek, Michigan, and we won that unbeaten. So we won our last 13 games in a row to be the national champions. It was a tribute to the kids from Tacoma because I knew how good baseball was. And once we were through the regionals and the nationals, we realized that the three best teams in America that year were in Tacoma, Washington. The Cheney Studs, the Woodworth Contractors, and the Stanley Schumann.
A couple of his fellow players fondly recall those glory days.
We go back so far. I was home from the Korean War, and I don't think I was home 2 weeks, and all of a sudden knock on the door, and there stands Doug. And he said, well, I'm putting together a ball club. Would you like to join me? We got into the old summer league days starting out, and just one thing led to another until all of a sudden here we're in state tournaments all over the country. We've played ball in California. Everywhere we went, we were the smallest market type team. But boy, we blitzed through those things you wouldn't believe. Of course, Doug was always there, and he thought things out, and everything he did, boy, turned out to be just exactly what it should be. And of course, with a couple of world championships under the table, he was so easy to get along with. He really knew how to handle people, And he didn't do it boasting and jumping up and down. He was just being Doug. And we were friends, my gosh, for so many years. Even after we quit playing, you still, if something good happened, he was involved in it in Tacoma. If it's do with athletics, he had a hand in it. And he was just a great friend.
Doug McArthur was an icon in Tacoma sports. Every athlete, young and old, knew who Doug McArthur happened to be. The good part was he was a great friend to me. In 1956, he coached the Stanley Schumann, who won the state championship, and he picked me up to go back to Watertown, South Dakota. I was the youngest member of that team. I was 18. The closest person to me was 21, and all the rest of them were much older. We were fortunate enough to win the championship in Watertown. And after the final game, all of the older people went out to celebrate. Of course, being 18, I went back to the motel. That night, late at night, my door was open and Doug was standing there with a bottle of champagne. He walked over and gave it to me and said, "Please take this, George, and hide it, because we're going on to the Nationals and we're going to win." And he said, "You're the only one that I know that will keep it secure." Fortunately, we did go on to win the national championship, and that bottle of champagne was shared by everyone. We won the national championship, defeated in both the regionals and the nationals. It was my pleasure to be a member of that championship team. I'll always remember Doug for the way that he treated everyone on that team. And Doug, please rest in peace, because you deserve it. Love you, George.
Doug graduated from the College of Puget Sound, where he played baseball and took broadcasting classes from well-known Tacoma historian, author, and broadcaster Murray Morgan. Doug learned how to paint a word picture. Beyond announcing sporting events, Doug continued painting wonderful word pictures for decades, whether it was a poetic ode to a legend, one of many eulogies for friends, or in press releases, speeches, or books on the history of sports in Tacoma and Pierce County. In 1956, Doug became the sports director of KTAC Radio, launching an enduring career in sports broadcasting, administration, and promotion.
Bill, I'm surprised that Clay didn't pick this one, because I was there and helping him. He was doing the Whitworth PLC game in Lincoln Bowl, and the fog was so thick you couldn't see the players in the broadcast booth.
Football
game. I had to run down the sidelines and bring up 2 or 3 plays at a time for him to broadcast and go back down and get them, right, Clay?
And remember, Doug, if you will, the PLU defeated Whitworth.
7-6. It was Whitworth's. Jim Lounsbury had a dynasty at Whitworth. It was their only defeat of the season, and Ron Billings, who's now my neighbor, kicked the extra point to beat him 7-6, and no one knows to this day whether the ball really went through the goalpost.
And Tom Krause was one of the officials.
Yeah. Well, that was true, a 4-minute delay?
Doug served as superintendent of public recreation for Tacoma's Metropolitan Park District and supervisor of athletics for Tacoma School District. But it was between 1966 and 1978 when Doug served as the University of Puget Sound's athletic director that he had his other great sports thrill. Doug said, "No other Northwest team had done that. We beat 5 Division I teams along the way. I was so proud of our program."
Our University of Puget Sound basketball team won the 1976 national championship. And I can tell you without hesitation that every member of that team held Doug in the absolute highest regard. And we're all so thankful for what he did for us. We've stayed pretty close over the years, and a lot of that is because Doug organized and facilitated several reunions on our behalf. You know, that team of ours, we had a lot of really great players: Kurt Peterson, Tim Evans, Rick Walker, Mark Wells, Rocky Botts, Brant Gibler, and others. And we had a fantastic coach in Don Zeck. But they say winning begins at the top. And that was certainly true for us, because at the top was Doug, who established a culture of winning and pride and class and hard work and camaraderie, all of those things that you need to be successful. And not just for the basketball program, but for all of our sports programs. And a lot of that is traced right back to Doug and the culture that he established and fostered. And I can tell you, like everybody that knew him, I was constantly amazed at his energy, his work ethic, and his unbelievable passion for all things related to the University of Puget Sound, Pierce County, and the city of Tacoma.
Rocky Botts was a member of the University of Puget Sound basketball team that won the national championship in 1976. The day before Doug died at the age of 94 on December 6, 2023, Rocky shared his memory of the impact Doug McArthur had on his life. I can only say that while Doug will be remembered by most as the ultimate logger, I will forever regard him not only as a true friend, but as a pure and simple giant of a human being. And as we all know, the world hasn't seen many of that brand of giant. At UPS, Doug also coached golf, baseball, and women's fast pitch softball teams, and mentored a number of friends along the way.
My first opportunity to broadcast any broadcast whatsoever happened in Tacoma, Washington. I went up there to visit Stan Naccarato. It was 1973 in the middle of August. And he said to me, "Jerry, why don't you come up to our press box and tape a few baseball games so I can hear you to see if we would like to have you join us next year." Later, Stan called me into his office and he said, "Jerry, I'd like to have you go across the street to the University of Puget Sound and meet the athletic director, Doug McArthur." So that's the first time I met Doug. And all of a sudden, the first football game came into being, and it was the University of Puget Sound right there in Tacoma against Slippery Rock. Now, I grew up in San Francisco, and I would listen to the sportscasts on television. And at the very end of giving the scores, they would say, "And Slippery Rock 14, Appalachian State 12. And at that time, I always thought that was a fictitious name. Slippery Rock? Come on, I thought they were just doing that to toy with the audience and have fun. And about halfway through the first quarter, and I was just saying a few things with Doug on the air, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you the new voice of the Loggers, Jerry Howard." So that's really the beginning of not only my friendship with Doug, but also what turned out to be a 50-year friendship. We met in 73, here it is 2023. My heart broke when I saw that he had passed away. Doug was a marvelous person. And whenever the Blue Jays then, as I got my first major league job in 1982, would come up and play the Seattle Mariners, I would always call Doug and have him come up and watch batting practice and be on the field with me as my way of saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." That's Doug McArthur, and he was a wonderful friend, and I just enjoyed him and Arlene so much over the years.
I met Doug McArthur in 1985, and with that introduction, he became, by most accounts, an unlikely mentor to me. I was, after all, a 24-year-old woman breaking into the traditional male world of athletic promotions, media relations, and event management. And he, the most well-known, well-respected, and accomplished sports leader in Tacoma and Pierce County. Doug ushered me into the community like we were old friends. He knocked on some doors on my behalf, and he knocked down a few barriers as well. We talked about the business of public relations, and he explained that all things that are meant to last were built with strong relationships. His advice to me: return calls, take advantage of opportunities to learn more, do the work, and if you haven't the passion for the work, find something else to do. He was a logger legend, and his mentorship and support in my early days set me on an amazing path, not only at Puget Sound, but in the community. He He provided me those opportunities to learn. I worked the Safeco Classic LPGA golf tournament with him, the Diamond Bowl football playoffs, published hundreds of game programs with his guidance, and experienced an amazing 32-year career doing the work that I was passionate about. His decision to support and encourage a young woman in 1985 made a big impact in my professional life, and my gratitude remains today. It turns out Doug and I had one other thing in common. He was the very first ever softball coach at the University of Puget Sound, and I followed his lead again, coaching softball for 22 years for the Loggers. He is surely going to be missed. My deepest condolences to his family, and thank you for everything, Doug McArthur.
I'm Bill Barsma, and I had the privilege of working with Doug McArthur as a faculty representative on the Athletic Advisory Committee when I was at the University of Puget Sound. Doug was an absolute promotional genius. On a threadbare budget, he put the University of Puget Sound athletic program on the map. He hired great coaches and retained them. The teams were always in national contention. And a little aside, Doug was also the coach of the first women's softball team for the University of Puget Sound that went undefeated, and that was all before Title IX. So Doug was a terrific friend, beloved by those who knew him. I say to Doug, logger up, we love you, we'll always remember you. You had a heck of a legacy.
My first question, Doug, is what is Title IX, and what effect has it had, or what effect did it have in intercollegiate athletics in your experience?
Well, Bill, by and large, Title IX said that women in this country will have equal opportunity with men in the area of high school and intercollegiate athletics. And it has had a dramatic impact, but I was there before that, and then when it happened, and I can tell you that the impetus was underway. It was going to happen, forced or not. Now, it might not happen everywhere, and it might not happen as quickly, but it was going to happen, there's no question. And I have a little different take on the women's soccer appeal, because I think you know I have had 17 years with the Safeco Classic and the LPGA golf tournament, and long ago I decided that I would rather watch the women play golf than the men play golf. And I think there's something to that, and it's for a lot of different reasons, but the one thing that strikes me about it is that it's sort of a testimony to what's going on in the world of sports right now. I think people want to relate more to people, and I'm not sure that the male professional athlete hasn't gone above and beyond being a person. And I think it's the greatest danger that faces professional sports today in the men's world. The women are real. They are in the golf circuit. They are in the soccer. They're for real. They don't have all of this falseness and all of these dollars and all of these huge egos. And
the UPS baseball team also reached its all-time peak while Doug was the AD. From 1969 through 1973, UPS played NCAA Division I baseball and had 5 players taken in the Major League Draft. While his time at UPS led to his induction into the Logger Athletic Hall of Fame, he was just getting warmed up for decades of more leadership in Pierce County sports. As an influential member of the leader of the Tacoma Athletic Commission, Doug was a key figure in the successful campaign to make the Tacoma Dome a reality in 1980, earning a 70% yes vote for a bond to build a dome of our own.
Bill, and Doug played a major role in the Tacoma Dome. We lost a couple times prior to the final success, but how much that dome has meant for the city of Tacoma.
It's been a tremendous asset.
Tremendous asset.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, I think that a real tribute to the dome and some of the decisions that were made along the way is we couldn't build the best indoor baseball stadium or the best indoor football stadium or the best concert hall. We built the most versatile dome in America, and that, I think, is what we've got. And it's, that the soccer team could come here. If we'd have gone with studies, we'd have had an arena-sized facility and no possibility.
Yeah, you went with your instincts. That this was...
Well, we wanted something for everyone, and that's what the city told us.
Right. Right.
We want to graduate our classes there because we don't have big enough places now. We want our kids out of the mud. At that time, you know, the football games, high school football games are being played in the mud. They wanted something. They wanted hockey. It was great. Choices to be made, tough choices to be made. Did we include ice in that on all it costs? Well, yeah. And in 1987, Tacoma hosted the United States Figure Skating Championships as a result. We've got a professional hockey franchise as a result. Those are tough decisions because we couldn't have ideal sightlines.
Right.
We couldn't have perfect facility.
Right.
But we've certainly got a versatile one.
And it came in on time and under budget, too.
I think that's true.
That's sweet. I won't want to comment about other stadiums. That's certainly sweet.
And he said, I played a major role. I want to assure you, he not only played a major role in that one, but every other facility I can think of in Tacoma. We can get into that a little later.
Heidelberg Park and Stadium, Cheney Stadium, and others as well.
Doug and my dad started a remarkable journey that began in 1956, a story intertwined with sportsmanship, leadership, and friendship. A man whose passion for sports and dedication to excellence have left an indelible mark on the Tacoma and beyond. In 1956, Doug McArthur assumed the role of manager for the Stanley Schumann, sponsored by my dad's shoe store that was down on 9th and Commerce downtown Tacoma. It was a pivotal year that would set the stage for an extraordinary chapter in Tacoma sports history. Their collaboration would not only lead the Stanley Schumann securing a national championship, but would also forge a lifelong bond rooted in shared victories and mutual respect. Doug's influence extended far beyond the baseball diamond, and like Dad, instilled a love for the game in countless Tacoma area athletes and fans. They were both all in their commitment to shaping young athletes' lives. That culminated when, once again, Doug and Dad teamed up to take on one of their biggest efforts together, getting a bond passed for a dome of our own. I remember the speeches that they gave. They tirelessly promoted the idea of getting our own dome for local sports and being able to attract the biggest names in entertainment. It's really difficult to truly understand what a positive impact their efforts together brought to this area that continues to this day and will continue to benefit this city for many decades to come. You know, Doug had the same affliction as my dad. Neither could say no. Where they found the time in their days to get so much done, I will never know. And their persuasiveness, a no was just something they didn't hear very often. You know, Doug was a hero to me and to thousands that were impacted by his love of sports, his generosity of his time and abilities. And the Nacarado-McArthur partnership will continue to impact this region because of their tireless efforts to make Tacoma a better place. That away, Doug.
Doug later formed MAC Northwest, which allowed him to combine his love of sports with broadcasting and public relations. In fact, during this time, Doug joined Art Popham live from the Cloverleaf every Friday night, where the topic was, of course, sports. He then turned to golf, where he helped found the LPGA Golf Safeco Classic at Meridian Valley Golf and Country Club in Kent. He served as tournament director of the Pro Tour event from 1982 through 1999 and formed lasting memories for many in the community.
You know, with Doug, if you met Doug, you were a friend. He had so many friends, and he did so much for the community. We actually got involved in golf after he left his job as the UPS athletic director. He started a company called MAC Northwest, and some of the things he was doing, one of the huge things that he did was the campaign for the Tacoma Dome, which was successful, and then other things that he did were in golf. A few of us got together, including Doug, to see about if we could bring the LPGA to the Northwest. And Doug flew to California, met with the commissioner, who I think was Ray Volpe at the time, and they definitely wanted to get to the Northwest. And then it came to find a sponsor. And Doug was successful with that also, finding the Safeco Insurance Company. We made Doug the tournament director. And what's pretty unusual about that is most tournaments of that size have a tournament director, but they also have a full-time marketing person, they have a full-time operations person, and sometimes even a full-time media person. Doug had none of those. He did it all himself, he and his wife Arlene. And the event was very successful. It ran for 19 years. Doug was the tournament director for 15 of those years. It was one of the favorite stops on the LPGA Tour, and Doug made it one of the favorite stops because he made the players feel so welcome and such. And he got involved in some other things golf-wise. We ended up putting together a group of 20 guys, similar to how the baseball team was put together, and bought the Highland golf course. And so basically Doug, with that call and such, he saved Highland golf course because who knows what would have happened. It's the only course in the North End. It's still going now. Jack Connolly recently bought it from our group. Again, Doug put that together. And so he's had a couple of major successes in golf. He also, when he had the company Mac Northwest, he did the marketing work and such for Canterwood Golf Club over in Gig Harbor. So all in all, Doug's been the guy. And boy, when it came to golf, even though golf was not part of his life before he retired, actually, from UPS as their athletic director. And but his last 20, 30 years golf was his life. He just loved it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to our awards ceremony for our 1996 Safeco Classic LPGA Golf Tournament. We have a big afternoon planned for you, and we'll get right along with it. Our awards presentation will begin in just a moment.
Patty has made so many friends here because she was the first champion. She sort of set the stage, and then her career took off right along with the Safeco Classic, so we were able to follow her as one of the developing stars since the beginning of this tournament. And there is win number 3 at Safeco, number 34 for her career.
Well, it's one thing I guarantee, she'll be back next year to defend her championship. Doug McArthur, nice kiss. Past tournament champion, director.
Doug also helped establish the Tacoma Pierce County Sports Museum and was a contributing author for the book, Playgrounds to the Pros, A History of Sports in Tacoma Pierce County. Doug was a longtime member of the Tacoma Athletic Commission, serving as president of the TAC in 1982. In 2004, he became the executive secretary of the TAC and remained in that position through 2018, helping the TAC execute its programs, recognizing hundreds of local high school athletes in all sports each year. Doug's work product was led by a passion that started when the highlight of his early days in the Cascade Mountains logging camp was to listen to Leo Lassen broadcast the Seattle Rainiers games on the radio. Nearly 100 years later, we recognize Doug, knowing exactly why he was awarded a key to the city of Tacoma and had ball fields and basketball tournaments named for him. On the list of people whose contributions have had the most monumental impact on the Tacoma Pierce County sports community, Doug's name would be at the top. He worked tirelessly and selflessly, with others to develop and promote local sports for 70 years. Finally, because we all know that Doug's love for his family came first in his heart, the TAC and TPC Sports Museum would like to extend a sincere thanks to his family for lending him to our community. We are grateful to Arlene, Sandy, Brian, and Carrie for sharing this great man and his enthusiasm, humor, energy, time, and creativity as our community is a better place because of Doug, and we thank you. I have never been a star in any sport, Doug once said, but I have played a lot of sports, and I think it is the feeling of achieving things together that is important. There is a magic to sports. Sports brings out the little kid in us.
Doug McArthur speaking from Baker Stadium on the UPS campus along with Jerry Howarth, where the final score was the University of Puget Sound 13 and the Rockets of Slippery Rock State 6. Good afternoon.